Welcome to this week's St. Clair County Board of Commissioners meeting. The types of business that occur at these meetings include public hearings, official voting on actions by the Board of Commissioners, presentations by departments of the county, and recognition of service that makes our county great. As your elected representatives, the St. Clair County Board of Commissioners is committed to improving the lives of all our residents while preparing county government to meet the demands of the future. In order to do that, we need to share our thoughts and plans with you. More importantly, we need you to share your thoughts, concerns, and opinions with us. We encourage you to come and experience the process by attending any of these meetings. They occur every first and third Thursday of the month at 6 p.m. at the St. Clair County Administration Building at 200 Grand River Avenue in Port Huron.
I'd like to call the St. Clair County Board of Commissioners Judiciary and Public Safety Committee meeting to order. Would the clerk take the roll, please?
Commissioner Smasko?
Here.
Commissioner Tamian?
Here.
Commissioner Heidemann?
Here.
Commissioner Bohm?
Here.
Commissioner Riley?
Here.
Commissioner Rushing?
Here.
Commissioner Greatop?
Here. We stand for the pledge, please. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. First thing we're going to do is a public hearing on the proposed ORV ordinance. Before we get too far into it, looks like we have maybe 6 or 7 people that would like to speak tonight, so I'll ask you to kind of limit your comments in length. And then a couple of other pieces that we're going to do here. Also, that particular piece is not on our agenda tonight for action, and what we are looking for is your input, and that's the reason for this public hearing tonight. So, with that, let's start with Dora Carrier.
Yes.
All right, Dora Carrier from Fort Gratiot, please. Take the podium, and then just give us your name and tell us what your message is.
Commissioner Greatop, do you want to remind him that public audience 3 minutes?
Yeah, I did.
My name's Dora Carrier, and I live in Fort Gratiot for the last 35 years. And I would really like to see the ORVs on the secretarial roads in St. Clair County, because there's about 35 in just our little Fort Gratiot community, and that would bring, by buying the sticker, that would be bringing in a lot of money into the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, David Wakeham. Did I say that right? From Marysville.
Yes, David Wakeham from Marysville. I would like the secondary roads approved. I am a disabled American veteran. I deer hunt, and I have to depend on my four-wheeler to get back to my deer run and that. And where I hunt, I have a friend who lives a quarter mile down the road, and if we want to have lunch together, I have to pack up my four-wheeler on the trailer, drive the quarter mile, have lunch, go back, unload again, and go back to my deer stand. I would sure like to see this happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Leslie Mason from Fort Gratiot. You're going to pass? Okay, thank you for coming tonight. Renee Mason? You're going to pass also? All right, thank you for coming tonight. William Dewey from Columbus. Oh yeah, thank you.
I am here to give anecdotal evidence about what's going on in Columbus Township with these ORVs. They are already on secondary roads, and apparently they're limited to 25 miles an hour by state law. These guys are doing 70 because they have these high-powered machines that can do it. Now, I pull out of my driveway and I hear them coming. I don't know which way they're coming from, but I'm very cautious about pulling out of my drive. The other thing is, there's a gang of them, like 5 or 6 of these, and they even chased me one time. I was on Gratiot and Big Hand, and I crossed and picked up Big Hand again. It's a little jog there. And they were racing me up and down the road. There was a guy on a dirt bike on the right-hand side, and every time I passed the mailbox, he'd slow down because he was afraid of hitting the mailbox. At Bauman and Big Hand, they formed accordion across the road so I couldn't get by. And one guy was fiddling with his engine. And then what he did is he backed his dirt bike back into me. And he claimed later on in a police report that I had hit him. The other thing is that it's basically a gang. And while I was there waiting for them to clear the road, one of them gets off the bike and takes a road gravel and polishes the back of my truck, tearing the paint off. The other thing is they were driving ahead of me at one time and they were splashing gravel on my car, right, back and forth across the road and looking back to see if they were hitting me. Because of him pushing his dirt bike back into me, he went and filed a police report that I had hit him. And when I got home, I was going to the Richmond Police later, and when I got home, there's a Macomb County Sheriff's Department, St. Clair Sheriff's Department in my driveway, and later on, a Macomb County Sheriff's Department shows up, and they want to charge me with leaving the scene of an accident. And basically, he never even rubbed any paint off on me, nothing. But the thing is, the cops fooled around, finally they discovered they didn't have any evidence and whatever, and I was let go or exonerated, however they do that. But the thing is that what the cops finally decided is to go to the house where these kids lived or where their parents lived and tell them, look, you don't have an RV sticker on your vehicles, and if you proceed in prosecuting William Dewey, we're going to give you a ticket. So that was into that. But the problem is, this is a gang. They're in Columbus Township primarily, and you can hear them. After 5 o'clock, you can hear them in the distance. They don't use proper mufflers, and in fact, they after on weekends, it's all day. It's all day, and it's. I live in the country because it's quiet, and these guys are nitwits. They've got. They have to
Excuse me,
be controlled.
Mr. Dewey,
Yes.
your 3 minutes is up.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Dewey, for coming
Now,
in.
when is this legislation going to be considered?
We're going to listen to you tonight and see what everybody says, and then we are probably going to take it under advisement and do a little more research. But if I could ask you one quick question, of all the things you said, are you in favor of putting this ordinance in place so that we have rules, or are you in favor of not putting it in place?
Well, I'm in favor of having rules, but my observation was that we already had laws about that they couldn't exceed 25 miles on rural roads, and they could ride down the shoulder of a main street only to connect to another dirt road.
Okay.
I think after the public hearing comment, we have the sheriff in attendance tonight, and I'd like to bring Tim up to give some background information, I guess, how
Yeah, we'll do it
it
that
got
way.
to this point, and kind of some question answers, those types of things.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Mark Lamberson from Memphis.
Hi, Commissioners. Unfortunately, 3 minutes is a little short for me. If you saw my letter that I sent you, I'll try to hold it to that.
We have that right here.
Yep. So the reason I'm here is my wife and my family and I like to ride our ORV. We go up north and ride it. And we tend to go up there. We'll ride around per my letter, and see different sites and things like that. So we just bought a new one, and when we saw that this was in the paper, I wanted to make sure that it was understood that there is a large group of the community that's in favor of this being passed. And just like this gentleman here says, there's a lot of misconception right now about who is allowed to ride on the roads, and that's what I found. I've polled people. I've called 5 businesses today, in my area. All of them are in favor of ORVs on the roads, one of it, which is a restaurant, gas station, list goes on and on. So I think the first thing is to set the record straight and say that you're not allowed to ride on the roads right now. So the people that are riding on the roads are actually breaking the law. So by us passing this ORV legislation, we're going to enact a law that we can hold them a little bit more accountable to. But the primary focus of the people that are not in favor of this seems to be that they're being kind of terrorized, as in this guy's case, by people ripping up and down the roads. And there's nothing we can do about that. These people are already out there. They're breaking the law already. My point is, I'm not breaking the law. I have several elderly neighbors and people within blocks of me, just outside of my reach, that I'd like to help. I have a plow on my machine. I'd like to go over and plow their driveways, and I don't really have the access to them, much less load my four-wheeler up on my trailer in the middle of winter, dragging it down a few blocks to get to their house, and taking care of their driveway to keep them out of harm's way. Now, as a byproduct of this, my wife and I could climb up on our ORV, ride up to the restaurant, have a bite to eat, go to a local cider mill or something that's on a back road that's accessible by law on the road right away, and go have a good time, enjoy the outdoors. My machine has a key that I can purchase for $100, locks me to 25 miles an hour. I can't even go over it. So Commissioner Smasko, we kind of went back and forth through some emails, and I said, I would not be in favor of breaking the law if I thought that I was going to lose my machine or even get a $150 ticket or $500 ticket. That's not worth it to me. And I'm the type of person that you want that law for. We're going to use the roads. We're going to use it for good. I've got a packet of information here. I don't know if I can just hand that to you or what, but I kind of went through. I looked at the demographics of the area, compared them to the people around us, the counties around us that have already approved these same legislations, and looked at how compounded are their communities. And when you look at ours, I mean, we're in some areas where I'm thinking about riding, we have as many people per square mile as a UP community. So, if we enact this, we wouldn't be much different than riding up in the Upper Peninsula, which is where I'm going. In another week, I'm spending $1,000 up there for gas, my lodging, take my ORV up there and pick some blueberries with my family in the backcountry. So I'll provide that to you. And I also I have a couple of articles in here from newspapers in Lapeer County and Saginaw County from when they went through and approved their ORV ordinances, or were looking at it. And a lot of the same instances that we were talking about, that we were concerned with, about the cost to the local police, the cost of road maintenance and all that, they addressed that already last year and the year before. That information's in here and it's highlighted.
Good, we appreciate that. I'll take that from you and make sure all the commissioners get it. We do have one quick question.
Yes, sir.
What's your actual address? Because it sounds like you're in my district. Are you in the city of Memphis?
I am, yes.
So the city council would actually be the ones that could enact this or not enact it. We're just looking at a county ordinance, which we'll talk about more. But
Correct,
the
yeah.
city
and
council will be the one.
my concern is not so much in the city. My concern is more outside of the city. That's where these people are. They live, maybe a mile outside of town, and I can't get to them, so.
Okay. You can call me anytime you want.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rushing.
Thank you. Those are all the cards I had. Was there anybody else that wished to address the board tonight? Sir? Yeah.
Thanks for coming, Mark.
Fill out a white card afterwards and make sure that I get it. Just give us your name and your address where you live, please.
My name is Robert Tolby, and I live in Riley, Michigan, right next to the outskirts of Riley, Michigan. The problem that I have with this RV is that I pay $1,000 for my car insurance for each car. It's $2,000. Then I have a bike that I ride on the back roads and up on the main road. I pay $600 a year for six months. I pay that catastrophic insurance, which is about $150 or $175 a year per unit. I pay no insurance for non-insured drivers. And also, I have to cover $100,000 worth of health insurance, because I have two health insurance, and neither one of them cover me when I'm on riding these back roads or any of these roads. So what I'm saying is these RVs are gonna flood the market with bikes on these back roads, are they gonna have insurance to cover this? Because your health insurance at home does not cover anything on the roads. I have 2 health insurance, neither one of them cover me, so I have to cover every one of my vehicles for $100,000 worth of liability for health insurance. Are you gonna flood the market with all these RVs on these back roads that don't have any insurance? They had a Channel 4 News last week, had a person in a wheelchair that was in an accident on the road, and the insurance companies won't pay because he don't have insurance on his wheelchair, because he's on a public road. So when you open this public road to all these RVs, are you gonna make sure that they have insurance for medical insurance and also liability insurance? Because your homeowners, your regular Blue Cross and Blue Shield do not pay for accidents on public roads. So that's all I wanted to make a statement, is I don't need my insurance raised because all these people riding around with not adequate enough insurance. But I have to pay all this. 40% of my insurance is just people that aren't insured, and plus my health care. I have to have health care on every one of these cars. $100,000 worth of health care, because it's not covered when I'm driving these cars on the road. Your health care does not pay for accidents on a public road.
Thank you, good points. Please fill out a white card and see that I get it.
Get you for or against?
Robert, were you for or against the ordinance? You want to see it passed or not?
If they have the proper insurance, I have nothing against it.
Okay.
I mean, there's pros and cons. I've had people go down the road. We had a fatality in Wales Township a year and a half ago where somebody plowed their driveway and a snowmobile ran into him, killed the passenger on the back. When I plow my road, I'm a little scared because snowmobiles can go a lot faster on the snow than cars. So I don't have to worry about the cars too much, but if somebody's coming down the road at 70 miles an hour with a snowmobile, you can hardly look down the road far enough. They did have a fatality just about 3 blocks from me, Wales Township, but that was this not last week.
Good, thank you very much. Anybody else that wishes to address the board? Sir, step up. State your name and where you live, and then please fill out a white card from that side table and bring it to me later.
My name's Robert Swider. I live in Muzzy Township, in just north of Quebec. And right off the bat, I'd like to say I'm against the ordinance. Do we have a representative from the law enforcement here tonight?
Yes, we do. We'll have them up in a few minutes.
Okay, well, my question is, why hasn't the unlawful use of ATVs been enforced up to this point? There are people with the consensus that they can ride right now legally. We've had problems here where it's just blown off and nobody even addresses it. People have gotten to the point where they're not going to call because nothing's going to be done about it. I've got people actually lifting the fences up on my property to trespass with snowmobiles and ATVs and ORVs. I just saw last week a girl, she was probably, it's hard to tell because she had a helmet on, but under 18, riding an ATV right down the middle of the road. It's a gravel road. And she had a child with her that was, I would say, maybe 2 to 3 years old, in her lap on the ATV driving down the road. Now, I just come home Monday night. I had a person driving down Foley Road, which is paved, on an ATV, riding right down the middle of the highway. And the problem here is that there's just this lawless mentality out there of people riding out there thinking, hey, nobody's going to catch me. I'm going to do whatever I want. I get so many people speeding up and down the road on the ATVs, racing. It's unbelievable. And I want to know how we got to the point now where Northern Michigan originally had a problem with people that didn't have egress to the ORV trails. And they then implemented an egress for these people to get to the trail. For us now, it's not an egress. The roadway is going to be the trail. And I got a problem with that. My house is literally 50 feet from where the grass stops and the road commission blade goes by. I don't need additional noise. I don't need stone chips in my windshield. How are these ATVs even going to maintain a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit if they don't even have a speedometer? Now, how can I identify somebody who's on an ATV, like the ones that have been running up and down the roads now? There's no license plate on the vehicle. How can I identify that? At least the road has a small decal with a number. Snowmobile does. Why does an automobile have a license plate? so it can be identified. Why does an automobile have a speedometer? Because there's an ordinance that you have to maintain a certain speed. I mean, I'm against this. It's unbelievable that a few people want to have the majority of people provide them with a place to recreate when I got a right to have peace and quiet on my roadway. It's just, it's unbelievable that somebody would even consider this. We've got these ATV dealerships pushing the ATVs, and actually they should lose their franchises. How can any government agency or anybody overrule a manufacturer that states that that vehicle was engineered, designed only for off-road use, and allow it on the roadway?
Sir?
But what I'd like to close with, and I want everybody to remember that people sat at a public hearing a few years back talking about opening the old railroads for the purpose of having a trail for people to ride bicycles on. And we have a dead girl now in Armada. Now, is anybody here on this board, does it think one life is worth it when there's not a problem with the way the law is now? If one person gets injured or killed, is it worth it? It's fine the way it is. It isn't being enforced now, the unlawful use. And that's basically all I have to say.
Good, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your comments. Please fill out a form and see that I get it. Anybody else that needs to?
Would somebody explain the law right now, or the one that's going to...
We have the
We're
sheriff
working on
and
that.
everybody here, we're gonna bring them up,
Al,
and that's
do
probably
you want to
what...
talk about insurance at all?
Well, there are no, just to address the insurance question, and just so everybody's aware, the ordinance that this hearing is subject to, I would say 95 to 99% of the requirements of the ordinance are taken directly from state law. There is no specific state law with respect to the operation of ORVs on county roads that requires any additional insurance or anything like that. So that's a direct mandate from the state. The state has advised the county and other municipalities what the requirements are. The state controls the insurance requirements on ORVs and vehicles and all that, and there's no additional requirement if these are adopted.
Good, thank you. If there's nobody else that wanted to address it, I want to put into the record that we do have from the Township of Casco a resolution opposing the St. Clair County ordinance. I also have received an email from a Jordan Thompson in Fort Gratiot opposing the ordinance. And then from Mark Lamberson, who did speak tonight already, several emails. He communicated with Commissioner Rushing, Commissioner Samasco, myself, and he presented called it a list of 10 people from their community who are in favor of this. So I just want that put in the record that we have it that way. Is there somebody from the Sheriff's Office that would like to address some of the questions that have been up here? Sheriff or Undersheriff? Sheriff Donlin?
Phil, and I don't mean to throw Phil under the bus, but he was back in 4 or 5 years ago when this legislation first came out. John Espinoza, I know, wrote it at the time. He was part of that. Phil, you were in the House. Are you very familiar with the part of it? Maybe you and Tim and a couple of you guys can tag team it a little bit, give a lot of history, because I think the intent of this board, correct me if I'm wrong, when it first came before us, was to help give the sheriff a mechanism to do some enforcement, because everything that I'm hearing today are people that have issues with these things, running, rampant, call it whatever. But if there's not a mechanism in place that gives them the ability to enforce countywide, it makes it a little difficult. So.
It is, and also it was so that, if each township did their own thing and everybody passed their own particular ordinance, the sheriff would not know. Every time you cross the line, you got to change the rules and the regulations. And so it was designed so it would be countywide. The sheriff could then enforce it countywide. All right. Sheriff Donlin?
Good evening. Most of what was just spoken, there's a lot of history in this. I guess I can back up. This has been in the works for probably 3 years through county government, where it's went back and forth. We've sat back and watched some of our sister counties like Sanilac County that has this very similar ordinance. I believe Lapeer County is either in the process or having it. So that's where this came from, the language. I guess on the enforcement, the issue you have is that you have 750 miles of St. Clair County, 40,000 plus calls for service that just the sheriff's office takes alone, priority calls primarily, and the deputy sheriff on his 12-hour shift goes from call to call to call to call. The odds of getting the call of the four-wheeler on the road and then driving to that location, him still being there, are slim to none. If you're in the right location at the right time, you may come across that officer or that person on the four-wheeler, but it's not as simple as just catching them just like that. I know DNR and state police are also out on the county roads. DNR takes a pretty stern enforcement, falls a little bit more under their job description, but more times than not, we may know where they live or where the house is if we're pointed out to them, but the kid isn't on the four-wheeler. And there is concerns also of chasing a 15-year-old who thinks he's going to go to jail for the rest of his life for a civil infraction and having him crash and hurt himself as well. So it's a balancing act that we look at the sheriff's office. But our concern when this went over to all of the 23 different townships, and what we don't want is this township's in, this township's out. I mean, I think it'll be very difficult for the citizen rider to know if Riley's in, Kanoki's out, Brockway's in, Emmett's out, and so forth. You could have 12 in and 11 out, which is going to be very, very difficult. Ira Township already has this ordinance. They've had it for about 5 years, and they primarily did it for their sportsmen who are riding the four-wheelers out on the ice in the bays for four-wheeling. I know Sanilac County is had almost the exact same ordinance for maybe 5-6 years up there, and have had good luck with it. If it does go to the townships, my recommendation would be to try it, and if it is a problem, you can opt out versus having a hodgepodge of those in and those out. I would prefer to see either those townships stay in it and then assess it in a few months, and you can always remove yourself from it. The undersheriff was involved very much with corporal counsel as far as writing it. He can get into some specifics if we have some of those questions from the board, and I'm sure possibly I can answer some as well from the board.
Thank you, Sheriff. Senator? Senator Phil Pavlo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Board members, you're asking me to wind the clock back several years, and I'll do the best that I can. Probably 5 or 6 years ago, there was a state representative from the West Branch area that viewed this ORV this policy as an economic development tool. And if you can picture yourself in northern Michigan, whether you're in the hotel business, you got a motel, you got a restaurant, you got gas stations, they needed to come up with a mechanism to allow where trailheads stopped an ability to get to the next one. And what we think about sometimes in northern Michigan is the snowmobiles. Snowmobiles tend to be able to cross roads. It doesn't create that much of an impact. And their winter economy is built on that. What they were trying to have put together was a zone, and it was essentially, it began north of M46, was where you could run the ORVs on the shoulder of the road. And it was narrowly defined to county road systems or a state road system that's strictly connected to another part of the trail system. And over the years, as that became successful and popular in northern counties, the push was to start pushing it down further south. And at the time, Representative Espinoza, who represented Sanilac County and the city of Port Huron, Birchville, and Fort Gratiot, put another provision together. And I can see where there could be some complicating factors when it's a township by township issue. Nobody knows if they're in or if they're out. I do need to apologize because I haven't read your ordinance. I'm not up to speed on how you guys are addressing it and what.
It's very, very similar to Sanilac's.
Okay.
Very similar.
All right. And I know that when Sanilac was contemplating approval of their policy, I heard a lot from the drain commissioners and the county commissioners over time, and then I think when they adopted, I really haven't heard much more from them in that respect. So
appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Undersheriff, did you want to say anything?
If you have questions, I'll be happy to try and answer them.
Any commissioners have any questions for anybody that's up there right now?
Snowmobiles are not part of this. Also, snowmobiles are not part of this. No, that was mentioned here a minute ago. Not at all.
I just want to make a point, we're not doing any adoption of anything tonight. This is just part of the process. I know Mr. Greatop, you've had a couple different workshops available
Had two
for
already.
those to attend, and the participation hasn't, to be quite honest, hasn't been that good at all. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I think we had 6 at the first meeting, and Tom, I think you said maybe 4 at the second meeting.
Okay,
That's
so,
about it. Mr. Swire, you had another question. Did you want to shoot it from the back there?
Sure. Going back to why the law is now unlawful, that hasn't been enforced. That is a law right now, so you're saying now that, well, we need this now, then we give the police department the opportunity to enforce it. There's been a law, it's been unlawful, so why hasn't it been enforced? Now, basing information on these other companies, I don't think is a viable thing to be doing. Because, as he stated, there hasn't been really enforcement. It's difficult for somebody to get to a rural area, so the statistics there are all wrong. Because there aren't. He just admitted that it's impossible to be patrolling these areas. So when things like this are taking place in other areas, they're not reported.
Thank you.
So that's an issue. Now, there has been avenues for the enforcement of it recently, just how it's been. And I'd like to ask, anybody under 18, has child services been contacted? Because that's child endangerment. Now, these officers in the past had the opportunity to do that, but they failed to. There has been a loss. I can give an example. I had a drunk driver going to a party up the road from my house. He's been down to bring my mail, went off the road, ran the mailbox over. He was still there. I finally got down to my driveway. He was still in the vehicle. I got his license number. He started going down the road. I said, hey, I yelled out the window. I said, you better stop. I got your license number. Went back to the house, called the police. He continued down the road. 15 minutes later, the sheriff's department patrol car showed up. He said, what's the problem? I said, drunk driver, here's his license number. Ran it over. And so the officer's like, well, we think that's where the damage is. I said, it's $150 enough to cover it? Sure. Okay. So nothing became of it. I called the next day and I asked, where's the police department? Dispatcher, what I was speaking to, she stated that, well, she said, you don't have any record.
I don't want to be rude and cut you off, but I think we're a little off the mark here talking about,
The mark
I mean,
is that-
whatever your point is, go ahead and make it.
Okay, the point is, the police department is very lax in enforcement. Because this is a drunk driver, they need to follow through on it. How are they going to follow through?
Okay, all right, thank you.
Before I'll get a picture.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly disagree with you that we came out on a drunk driver and just took $150 for your mailbox and that there was no report of it. Because if you call dispatch, they automatically make a record of that. So somewhere in there, there's a miscommunication. Either hold on, you got a chance to talk, let me talk. Either the person that hit your mailbox was not drunk and they made some sort of arrangement, civil, so that your mailbox could get repaired, or again, there's some sort of miscommunication in there because we take drunk driving very seriously and we arrest a lot of drunk drivers in this county. I doubt very seriously that we did that, number one. Number two, I'm sure there was a record of it. There is a record of it. I think what the sheriff was trying to say is that you're right, there is a state law right now that says you cannot operate a ORV on the road, but it's a civil infraction. Unfortunately, it falls a little bit lower on our priority list. We have a lot of calls that we're taking. Just like that, your mailbox was run over. It took the deputy 50 minutes to get there. I'm sure he wasn't waiting down the road for 50 minutes until he decided to show up. He was on another call, very busy doing something else. That's why it took him so long to get there. And thirdly, most of the time, at least in my experience, when I would take ORV on the road calls, by the time he got there, it's very hard to determine who was riding the ORV. And I can't write a civil infraction ticket unless I witness it or unless I have somebody who's willing to be a witness. And most of the time, people call and say, that person was riding the ORV, but I don't want to get involved. So if you want to get involved and be a witness against somebody who's riding an ORV on the roadway, that's fine, we can handle that. But that doesn't happen very often. It may happen in your case, but it doesn't happen very often.
Well, it's not a discussion back and forth this way, Mr. Squires. Please understand, it's a public statement where you get to make your statements, and I kind of bent the rules a little bit by giving you another opportunity here, another bite at the apple. But Sheriff, anything else you guys want to say? If not, then I'm going to open up to the commissioners. They have an opportunity to speak. Commissioner Smasko.
I had a question for Tim. You know, when I was in the prosecutor's office many years ago, the conservation officers enforced ORVs a lot. That was their bailiwick. They wrote a lot of them.
And they still do. And they have
that's my question.
far more time than
Well,
what
my
the
question,
sheriff's
Tim, so
office.
this DNR statute, I'm looking at MCL 324, the 81,000 series. So the laws are still on the books for, we do have laws that regulate ORVs presently, correct?
There is.
State
What
law.
this does is sets up a playbook countywide locally. Like one of the gentlemen said, if you polled 10 people, you're going to get 9 different answers. Unfortunately, there's just been very little interest in the open public meetings to try to educate the public on what the plan was of this ordinance.
I just wanted to clarify this issue of, like, our board chair said, we're looking, part of the reason to look at the ordinance is to give the sheriff something to enforce for ordinances, and I wanted to make sure that the state law was still in place, reasonable speed, 100 feet within a home, cemeteries. It covers a lot of things you can't do on an ORV. So we do have the state law, and it is in place. And just for the record, what I had surmised from the contact I had is probably 75% of the people that contacted me were, well, 50% were against it, 25 didn't care for it but didn't have a strong opinion, and 25% kind of wanted it. And that's the assessment I made from just the public comment that I received on it. The one was Greenwood Township trustee Heather Stewart had emailed in. She was against it. Mark's here. He was strongly for it. I think we do need to look at it. My position would be, as the gentleman from KPAC said, there are a lot of people that want peace and quiet and just don't care for it. But there are people that want it too. And that's what I'm trying to get a feel for. And when you have questions where some want it and some don't, we have to determine what's in the community's best interest. And that's kind of what I'm trying to feel my way through now. So I will consider everything, but that's the comments I wanted to make.
It's hard to do a straw poll when we open these up for the public and people haven't come. So it is difficult. I can only tell you that I'm pretty active and I'm in all areas of the county every day. I'm from the western side of the county, your district. And the vast majority that have approached me are owners that are in favor of this. And they want to know when it's going to be legal and what is going to be the law and how is this going to work. Those are the ones that have approached me. So, you know, everybody may have a different feel for who's approached. And I may be at a Little League game, I get cornered. I may be at, you know, in line at the bank, but I do get approached, particularly in the west and the deep south in the county, because they already have it in one township in the south. And I think that is confusing. When Ira has it, Clay doesn't. It gets a little confusing, particularly out on the ice. And I've been cornered down there, particularly some of the Clay residents that are anxious to have this. So they're very similar to their neighbors in Ira.
I think, but his point earlier, if you had adopted a countywide ORV ordinance, used it for a period of time, the local municipalities still have the ability
Absolutely.
to opt in or opt out.
Correct.
So there's always that, caveat
Absolutely.
to it.
And I'm in favor of that.
Okay. Any other commissioners that would like to address? Commissioner Rushing?
I have, and I talked with you at this. I was a township supervisor for 6 years before becoming a county commissioner. And I, as a township supervisor, was against it just for a lot of the concerns that have been brought up. And I addressed our county sheriff and I says, I believe that this is going to put more additional, take from your surplus of revenues to try to enforce this, giving you extra duties, and budgets are pretty tight already. I don't know what kind of revenues are going to have to be generated. If somebody calls you and it's low on your priority list, if the ordinance isn't going to be able to be enforced, if it's low on the priority list and you can't get a car out there to enforce it, do we need an ordinance? So I'm just making my comment and then let you finish, Tim, because I got a couple other things. This is basically going to be for townships. There's 23 townships. This isn't going to, it potentially can represent the cities, but the majority of roads are in the townships. So this is going to be by the township. You said there's 750 miles. I represent 6 townships, and I know there's over 250 miles in those townships, and that's where the majority of the ORVs are going to be used. There's some out where I'm at, and there was a kid, 15 years old. He went through the cornfield, went through my woods, and I just went and had a nice talk with him, and he never did it again. But he just being a kid. And you're going to have generations, whether we adopt this now or don't adopt it, but you're going to have kids, whether it's 5 years from now, 15 years from now, there's going to be people that are going to still do it. I don't know if we have a concern in the county I don't know, and I didn't even consider this potential revenues. If there's any revenues that can be generated at the county to get those ORV stickers, are we going to have to put that on each ORV that's going to use the roads? I didn't even know if that's part of this. If that is, I would like to know what kind of revenues are going to be generated from it. If that isn't a concern or part of the ordinance, then the one concern that was brought up, that's why I made a note on that. And you already said snowmobiles. Also, Bill Rebenap, and I talked with Phil Pavlo after I talked with him, and he said he's like an old farmer, but he remembers everything, and he's a smart guy. And I looked for Bill. He has a lot of insight on stuff. He sent information to all the commissioners, and there was 5 concerns that he brought up, 5 major concerns. There's more than 5, but he went through it pretty well, and his board unanimously are in opposition to it. Wales Township, although they don't have a resolution, they're against it. And I'm going to get with Bill Wynn, and possibly his board will take a position on it. And he's here, you can speak up if you want, if your board's going to be for or against it, that to your best of your knowledge. But Columbus, I don't believe is for it, and Casco's against it. Riley, I've talked with Al Titus, had him over and met in my office. His board isn't for it either. So there's 5 of my 6 townships that don't want it. One of the things he also put up there is that he wants specific wording in the ordinance, because after this, if it is passed, if you don't put it in there, the exact wording, and I don't believe we've changed the ordinance yet, that each township or municipality can opt out. I know by state law they can, but this board is going to change in time, township boards will change, and they might just assume there's a county-wide ordinance that, well, we don't have an option in it. You will always have an option. So that was one of his concerns. That's pretty much it. I don't know if you can address anything that I just brought up.
Well, I guess a number of things. There is a ORV sticker, state sticker, that has to go on the vehicles. So the county doesn't seek in it. They don't make anything on that. There's no revenue. It's a state ORV. There's state ORV sticker, and then there's a trail sticker. This resolution requires a state ORV sticker. But
so no revenues would be generated like for Fort Gratiot, that was stated?
No revenue.
Okay.
There has been talk with some of the commissioners about having a county sticker, but that's not in this ordinance at this point. As far as what your township supervisors have, I guess you'd have a pulse for it. They haven't contacted us, and I don't know if they were in the 2 meetings with the undersheriff or not. But I do think you may see less calls for service if there's some sort of a playbook and we know they're allowed on the road. I think I'll have less calls than the ones going down the road that are illegal that we don't get to in time. So I don't know if it's going to tax us anymore. I think it's going to tax us less.
Well, I got one question then, or I might have a couple more, but municipal civil infractions, we set that up when I was a supervisor. We didn't have that in Riley 7 years ago. They didn't have one. If a township does not have a municipal civil infraction ordinance in place,
we don't enforce it.
So they have to have that in place first, and I'm not sure if every township does.
We don't enforce that either. They'll have their township ordinance enforcer.
So if you go out and pull somebody over,
I can do it under state law. Under state law.
Is there any liability as far as the township enforcing and going to court and having their township attorneys representing the township in court? Is that going to be
no way for me to answer that. Right, I have no idea what liability.
I don't want to put any additional, to some of these townships. You take Lynn Township, their entire budget's only a little over $200,000.
They have ordinance enforcers. And the only ones we do ordinance enforcement is when we have a contract with that township. And it's very limited at that aspect.
Any other questions?
General law townships, though, you won't have any contracts with general law township, with the rare exception.
Rare exceptions, yeah. And municipalities, which we have contracts with, but that is not part of this, like the city of Algonac.
Any other comments from commissioners? Hearing none, gentlemen, I'll say thank you very much. Appreciate all your time, everybody that spoke tonight. One of the things that we try to do as commissioners is to get a pulse of what the community wants, and that's a big part of what this meeting was about tonight, to have you come out and speak. And everybody that spoke, and I thank you for speaking tonight. You were very courteous and kind, and you followed everything that we needed and asked that you did. And you made some very, very good comments. It gives us a lot to think about now, gives us a chance to go. Some of the questions you asked, we will be researching those, and we will look into this a little bit further and try to come up with some sort of a decision, possibly some general workshops where we get more people to come out and give us a hand with this thing. So if there's nothing else, gentlemen, then the public hearing on the ORV ordinance will be closed.
I'll make a motion to close the meeting. Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
The public hearing on the ORV ordinance is hereby closed. If you were here for that, you're welcome to stay. You're also welcome to take off. We got some exciting stuff coming up. You may want to stick around. Thank you. Yeah, we will. That was a question that we got our lawyer on that one. Good, thank you. All right, I would now like to call to order the Judiciary and Public Safety Committee meeting as a whole. If the clerk would take the roll, please.
Commissioner Samasco?
Here.
Commissioner Tamian?
Here.
Commissioner Heidemann?
Here.
Commissioner Bohm?
Here.
Commissioner Riley?
Here.
Commissioner Rushing?
Here.
Commissioner Greatop?
Here. Any additions or deletions to the agenda as it's presented? Hearing none?
Motion.
Support?
Motion support to accept the agenda as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Any citizens wishing to address the Judiciary and Public Safety Committee? Hearing none. Updates, do you want to bring Senator Pavlo?
Hey, Phil, I'm going to need you for a quick second here. I talked to Phil Pavlo today, earlier. There's been some questions regarding a AG opinion on use of some of the library funds, and I talked to Phil about if he would be the proper individual that would be able to, I guess, take a look at that. I know there was a question regarding Mike Windling looking into it, but Mike does not have the ability, correct me if I'm wrong, to get that ruling that it has to be done by a legislature. And you want to explain a little bit how that works?
Yeah, Supervisor Gill is here today from Greenwood, and her and I have had an ongoing conversation for the last couple weeks, I guess, and walking through the process of, number one, how do you go about getting an Attorney General's opinion? What is that process? The process has to be initiated through your local legislator, either your state representative or state senator. And Supervisor Gill had sent me a 17-page packet that I've moved forward. And what I explained to Terry was, we've been through this a couple times in my last 10 years. There's some real specific language that needs to be dialed into. So I've taken the packet. I'll be meeting with our Senate Corporate Counsel on Wednesday to review it. But one thing with any kind of Attorney General activity, it's got to be a very specific question, because it'll just get thrown out or it'll get put into another department. So what we've talked about is the first filter will be our corporate counsel looking at it and finding out the best way to ask the question. And then it'll go on to the AG, and the AG will then assign it to a specific part of their department to review it to see where it fits in with local government. And then if it passes through there may be an opportunity for the AG to have his lower department, give us some direction on what would have to happen. At that point, if there's not a clear-cut answer, then it would go to the Attorney General. That process sometimes can take up to 6 months, just because of the nature of how that office operates. But I've committed to Supervisor Gill to run that through and give it, the most effort that we can to get the right answer. And really all we're looking for is the right answer. And that's what the Attorney General's opinion is about. While it's not binding, it certainly will help direct you guys as a board to potentially deal with the outcome.
Very good, thank you. I just wanted him to give a little update on that.
Good, okay.
So,
thank you, Senator. Appreciate it very much. Any conceptual initiatives from administration? Nothing? There is no old business. Under new business, item 7A, fiscal year 2015 Community Corrections Grant Application. Gentlemen, you have the paperwork in front of you.
I would move that we forward that to the full board.
Support. Motion to move it on to the full board and seconded. Any discussion or any questions? Jerry Summers here if you have questions. It's pretty much routine, same thing year after year. It's kind of a rubber stamp grant that we get. Hearing no questions, all in favor of sending it on to the full board?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. It will go to the full board. Item 7B is fiscal year 2014 Emergency Management Performance Grant Agreement.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I would move that the Emergency Management Performance Grant Agreement be placed on the full board agenda.
Support.
We have a motion to support. Any discussion? All in favor of sending it on to the full board?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 7C is Resolution 1438, opposing construction of a Canadian nuclear waste repository in the Great Lakes Basin. Gentlemen, I would like to do this for final action so that we can get this off the table and moved on. So if whoever makes the motion would make that for final action, I would appreciate it.
I will make that motion for final action.
I have motion and support. Senator Pavlo, would you like to address us again on the nuclear waste repository resolution that we are looking at?
Just a quick little plug here. We had a hearing downstairs a week ago.
Yeah, last
Yeah,
Tuesday.
I think, yeah. Bill Greatop, yourself, you had some local legislators, myself attended. It was very informative.
Right. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for an opportunity to talk about something that we've been working on for quite a while. And it's in reaction to this permanent nuclear waste repository that's being contemplated in Kincardine. Ontario Power Generation is proposing a permanent nuclear waste dump for low to intermediate level waste, essentially buried about 2,300 feet underground, less than a mile from the banks of Lake Huron. We've been working on this for quite a while, and we've put some of our best research people together out of the Senate, and we've come up with 4 resolutions and 1 Senate bill to address this. And really what we're asking is, through resolution, we're asking the President, the Secretary of State, and Congress to invoke the powers of the 1909 Boundary Waters Treaty. And in that treaty, there's a provision to set the International Joint Commission in play to review any type of what would be considered a potential hazard to the health of the Great Lakes Basin and to a boundary issue as well. It's a very powerful body. It's a very powerful policy body. And it was originally set up to resolve disputes that have water and public health at risk. And we believe in the Michigan Senate that this is a worthy path. We also passed a resolution engaging the Great Lakes Commission to take the same study on in a very serious way. And if you remember back in 2008, the Great Lakes Commission was pressed to come up with a water diversion and water withdrawal policy. That policy was turned into a compact where all 8 Great Lakes states basin and 2 provinces unanimously agreed on how we're going to treat water withdrawal and water diversion out of the Great Lakes Basin. And it's my opinion that a potential development of a permanent nuclear waste site far exceeds the level of caution that the water diversion would take. So I've asked all the other 7 Great Lakes state legislatures to follow this same path that Michigan's taking and to urge support as well. One of the things that we've been doing is getting local units of government to come and acknowledge the work that the Senate has done and standing up and leveraging your voice to the people that the 7 of you represent in this case. On September 9th, they'll begin new hearings at the Nuclear Regulatory Safety Commission in Ontario. And what I'd like to be able to do is have as many resolutions from places all over the state of Michigan, as well as, New York, Pennsylvania, Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin, Minnesota, to be able to get behind this and say this really needs a thorough review. So that's what we're working on. You taking up this issue in a timely manner is kind of a big deal, and many communities across the state are following your lead.
So appreciate that. Commissioner Rushing, you got a question?
Yes, we do have 3 township supervisors here, and when I talked to Bill Wynn about the ORV, I believe I talked to Bill Remenap, he forwarded this to all the townships also, I believe, in the St. Clair County. Us being their neighbors, he is asking for the resolutions for all the townships to approve and, to support this for the obstruction, of course, opposing the construction. And if you have any questions, or if you want to address the township supervisors here so they have any information so their board can get a potential resolution also.
If there's any questions, I can meet you out in the hallway and discuss it with you. Our office would have sent model resolution language out. I'm also working with Senator Green, who has the rest of the thumb in Bay County, and one by one, the counties are addressing it, and so are the local units, townships, cities, and villages.
Okay, very good. Any other questions? Commissioner?
Just a couple things. I actually attended that workshop, call it whatever you want. A couple interesting things that I guess I came out of there with was the alternative site portion. As part of their due diligence, they need to look at alternative sites throughout Canada. And part of the report is they haven't really looked at alternative sites, okay? Essentially, they got a host community, Concordia, which just so people know, the largest nuclear power plant in North America is already there on site. Because a lot of times when this first happened, a lot of people, I didn't know that until 2 or 3 months ago when we first had it there. They want to store the additional waste on site there. And it's path of least resistance, I get that. So Concordia had signed a host agreement to actually host this. They did not go out and look at any other alternative sites. And I think to the point, the amount of land that they have on the Canadian side it's tremendous amount of area that there's a lot of other places. So I thought Phil, and they kind of brought that other, we heard the other information previous from the other side. Phil brought in the people that were in opposition. I think it just shed a lot of light for me personally. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? I would just say that it's something that you really need to look at and take a look at. I applaud the senator for doing what he's doing and reaching as far as he is reaching to get a look at this thing. I did sit in on the presentation that the Canadians came over, and they did about an hour and a half presentation. It was very informative. They did a pretty good job of trying to sell it and make it sound good. But when you start looking at the other side of things, you start thinking about other things. So it's good to do. I do want to note that this board did already do one resolution in opposition to this back a couple of months ago, and we are in the process now of supporting the senator and his actions with this resolution that we're about to undertake. Anything else? All right, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We will send that resolution on. Any other judicial or public safety matters? Anybody? All right, item 9 is information only. We have a letter on the ORV ordinance, which I've already addressed. Receive and file.
I move that the Judiciary Public Safety Committee packets be received and filed.
Second. Motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. An adjournment, gentlemen?
Move we adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
That meeting is adjourned.
Okay, we'll call to order the Human Services Committee. Can we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Samasco?
Here.
Commissioner Tamian?
Here.
Commissioner Heidemann?
Here.
Commissioner Bone?
Here.
Commissioner Rushing?
Present.
Commissioner Greatop?
Here.
Commissioner Riley?
Here. Any additions or deletions, changes to the agenda?
Make a motion, we accept the agenda as presented.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 I assume the rest of you are.
2-0 is passed.
I said aye.
Okay, are there any citizens to be heard for the Human Services Committee? Okay, updates? If none, conceptual initiatives? Okay, we have no old business on here. New business, we have 3 items on there. First one, WIC Breastfeeding Peer Counselor Funding Program is 1. You have someone on that who would like to speak, please?
Good evening.
Good evening, Greg.
What we have is an opportunity to receive funding for this particular program. The state did this WIC breastfeeding peer program throughout the state to bring initial and sustained breastfeeding numbers up amongst new mothers in the WIC programs. And they're offering us a chance to, and it has worked statewide, so they're offering us a chance to receive the $42,200 to hire a position, part-time position, to be this breastfeeding peer counselor within our department. And it does fully cover our costs, including indirect costs and room space and supplies and some time from our supervisor and from one of our other WIC technicians, so there's no cost out of the county to do this program for one fiscal year. And so we're just looking for approval to receive that.
Is this something you said is throughout the state?
Yeah, the state has done some pilots with it in other counties that have had breastfeeding numbers that are lower than the state average numbers, and ours fall slightly below. So now it has had some success statewide, so now they're offering it to additional counties.
Well, that was news to me on something, I'll tell you that. Not that I'm a female either, but I was a little surprised when I heard about that. Any questions?
Just one. What benefit is this going to provide St. Clair County? I mean, what benefit is it going to do to add an additional government position for breastfeeding? Just to concern another expanding government. So what benefit is the St. Clair County going to get from it?
The benefit is with the infants in the county, because breastfeeding has been proven to provide healthier and more immune system, so you can have less sick infants the longer they stay on breastfeeding. So overall, just with the health of the community, if we can keep these moms off the formula and on the breastfeeding for those sustained 6 months, the stats are
okay. Then I got just one other question. If it's been done in pilot programs throughout the state, is there documentation that we can track to where people actually use this program and be able to say, okay, this many kids in St. Clair County because of this program are benefiting?
Yes, and it will be tracked, yes.
Do you have any documentation on that?
Not with me right now, no, but our WIC coordinator would have that.
Before I want to expand government, I'd like to have a definite benefit to the county.
Any other questions?
I would move that we go ahead and approve the WIC breastfeeding peer counseling funding.
Support.
Move to support it to move it on to the
Full board.
Okay, any other questions? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Thanks, Greg.
Okay, item B, lease of copiers library system.
Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for your time. Just wanted to bring forward an opportunity for the library to replace our current photocopiers, which are over 8 years old, and we're having difficulty finding parts and pieces to keep them up and running. These are our copiers that we use to serve the public, so they get some pretty hard use. The contract that we're looking for is to lease copiers that will increase the functionality. They will replace in all of our libraries a fax machine, a printer, and a copier, and all of that functionality will go into one machine, and it will also improve the service by offering scanning as well, so scanning to fax, scanning to email, etc. So the patrons will gain what we're calling a business hub type piece of equipment in each of our branches as a service improvement. And we are looking to replace 13 machines, which is actually less than what we currently have. We have 14 now. And we do intend to continue charging for copies, so we will see a return on our investment by charging for color copies, black and white copies, etc.
Does it even come close to paying for the machines themselves? I mean, the amount of money that you collect, Allison?
No, it doesn't. But what we do have is our copies will pay for the wear and tear and the ink and the paper.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Allison, in your report, you outlined for us the cost and the machines that you're recommending. Were any other machines considered in the process?
Yes, this was actually a part of the bid process that the county IT did when the county purchased copiers this year, the 20 copiers. And so realizing that the library is choosing a different company, we talked to the county IT, and they were very positive that either company that was chosen would be a very good company. The reason why we went with Ricoh is because we had both machines tested in our libraries. In the main library, the staff used it, and it was felt that the functionality and the durability for public use fell on the side of the RICO.
So there were two companies that,
Yes.
and what, is this the same company that's providing existing services to the library?
No, sir, it is not.
Did they bid?
I believe they did. I believe the RFP went out in January last year. It's been quite a while, yes.
So I see, so when the IT department did that bid, they had a, this was just one portion of that overall bid?
Correct, yeah, this
And-
was
and-
one of the companies that bid on the RFP set out by county IT.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Good. Any other questions? Okay, yes.
I would move that we approve the lease for copiers for the library system, pass that on to the full board.
Support.
Regular meeting.
Support.
Moved and supported. Any other questions? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Very good, thank you. Okay, the next one, you might as well sit tight, huh? Okay, the next one, item C, is Westlaw subscription renewal library system.
Yes. If you remember, about 6 years ago, the library, public library system took on the responsibility of providing the law library access to county residents. And one of the things that we must do is, of course, have materials available. And what we've been noticing is that the print materials in the collection, the cost of keeping up the print materials in the collection is going up 12 to 15% every year as far as our subscription goes. And so what we had done is we talked with Westlaw, and they were able to actually reduce our print subscription, but increase our access and reduce redundancy in the information provided, and also reduce our costs. So we'll see with this contract a reduction in our print material for law information, but we will increase our online information through Westlaw, as well as increase the number of seats available from 2 seats to 3 seats. So we'll have more availability across the county in the library system. We also, the other product that's available is LexisNexis. Unfortunately, that product would not allow us to utilize their information across the county. We would have to buy a seat for every library in order for that to be available to everyone. So we chose to go with the Westlaw product.
Good. Any questions?
I'll make a motion to move to full board.
Good. Support? Moved and supported. All in favor?
Aye.
Good,
Thank
thank
you very much.
Okay, next, under other service matters, human service matters, if there's anything. Otherwise, the information only, the Health Department point of interest, July 2014. And I will take a motion to receive and file packets.
So moved. Support.
Moved and supported. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And move for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Favor, everybody. Oh, thank you. I'd like to call the St. Clair County Board of Commissioners Environmental and Public Works Committee meeting to order. Madam Clerk, would you take the roll?
Commissioner Samasco?
Here.
Commissioner Tamian?
Here.
Commissioner Bohm?
Here.
Commissioner Riley?
Here.
Commissioner Rushing?
Here.
Commissioner Graytop?
Here.
Commissioner Heidemann?
Here. At this time, the approval of the agenda. Do we have any additions, deletions, or changes to the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, we have a proposed addition to the agenda, the St. Clair Conservation District matter.
Okay, could we put that under updates? They're here to give us an update.
I'll move that it be added to the agenda under updates.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Support.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. I would encourage, or I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Support.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. At this time, do we have any citizens to be heard? Seeing none, we'll go to updates, and we have Joe Katz with the Soil Conservation District here. Joe? We also have Charlie Lewis here. Thank you.
Thank you for letting us speak tonight. As introduced, my name is Joe Kautz, and I am the administrator now for the St. Clair Conservation District. And Karen McHugh is the chairman for it, and Charlie Lewis is a board member. And tonight, I guess I come here tonight to kind of introduce myself to the board. As you guys might be well aware, the district was closed for about 1.5 years, and through the collaboration of conservation districts in Michigan, MDA, and so forth, we kind of come up with a plan, and we've seen the demand and the need for the conservation district down here. We kind of come up with a plan and formed a partnership with Sanilac Conservation District. And a lot of that I put in writing to you guys just to kind of show you that. So I didn't want to go through all of that tonight, but I just wanted to touch base that there's a very bright future with the conservation district down here in the past 6 months that we've seen happen. The Natural Resource Conservation District has gone through some personnel change. She couldn't be here tonight, Mrs. Christina Nicola. She's a new district conservationist with NRCS, and she's exploring all these new opportunities to help landowners out with conservation issues throughout the county, and utilizing a lot of Farm Bill monies that are coming through with the 2014 Farm Bill. And a lot of that money is being actually reallocated towards conservation. So through the collaborative efforts of the Conservation District and NRCS, we believe there's a large potential to implement various practices needed to help with soil and water conservation. So as you guys had a chance to read through that a little bit, I wanted to touch base with you that the USDA Service Center that is located and that we're housed out of is located in Wadhams, and it does actually service Macomb County as well. So you'll see that the proposal that I'm working on putting together includes Macomb County. What we're trying to do is have a position to help NRCS promote and bring conservation contracts to fruition, and we are requesting monies, or we are on the agenda next week with Macomb County to request some financial help from them as well. One thing with an NRCS grant, it does require local match monies. A few things I just wanted to quickly touch base with on is there's an increased interest in smaller scale farming. There's a lot of, we have probably 2 people a day come in the office and ask about bee pollination. There's a lot of beekeeping initiatives out there. And a lot of 5 to 10 acre parcels that people not necessarily are farming, but wanting to do a tree planting with and so forth. We want to, be more active with, time allowance with watershed organizations. We know I'm the administrator for the Sanilac Conservation District, so I've been involved with watershed initiatives for quite a long time. And I know there's a great demand down here as well for that. Just a few quick facts. Through the past 1.5 years, we've kind of helped the St. Clair County along, actually through the Sanilac office, because we just received those phone calls. And through some different guidance and a shared meat technician, which is the Michigan Agricultural Environmental Assurance Program, we've guided some farms into, what has actually turned into about $702,000 worth of funding in the past 2 years down here, utilizing Farm Bill monies. So I guess, in short, this is a proposal that I have out there. I don't have any answers from Macomb County yet. But we have made a lot of progress in the past 6 months since we formed that partnership. One thing to my surprise, this county had probably one of the largest and most successful reforestation programs that was still intact through their tree sale program. It just happened, I was in the office there about the second day down here, and the plat book company called, and they were like, well, we're ready to send this new 2014 plat book out. And so we kind of got on that, and we have that out. We've had that released for about a month now. The meat technician that's funded down here through the state of Michigan on a grant, he's worked with probably over 100 farmers in the area, and he has 32 farms that are meat verified within the state. Do you guys understand meat at all, or I guess I'm not sure where it's an environmental assurance program that is it was a bill signed by the governor. Actually, it was his first law, but it's a program where farms, if they make the right corrections within the right to farm guidelines for environmental protection, that the state comes out and verifies that they've met these guidelines and offers them protection against civil issues, right to farm issues. If there is an accident, they wouldn't be fined for it because it was accidental, because they were taking the precautionary measures towards it. And it was one of the first bills signed by the governor when he was, what's that? It was the first 2 bills that he signed when he took office. And if you guys, I don't want to bore you here tonight, but if you guys do want to know more about it, it's a very good program, and I'd love to take time with each one of you and educate you on it. What's that? Okay. And a proclamation is sent out to by the county commissioners to every farmer that has met that verification standards. With the partnership, we've also have brought in a nitrate testing service that allows farmers to determine how much nitrogen is really on their land before they apply more. Not only saving them money, but also, saving groundwater contaminants and surface water contaminants. To highlight a few other things available is native grass plant or wildflower cedars, just for if somebody that's got a 5-10 acre parcel and wants to create habitat. There's something that you guys might not be aware of. Through conservation districts, there's a qualified forest program out there through the state of Michigan, which actually is like a PA 116 program, where they have a forest management plan. They can receive a tax credit through the state. So that out there, that's something new that's within the past year and a half since the districts. Few things going forward. I'm working with the USDI Fish and Wildlife Service. We're going to try and get some grant funding from her to help with some of the Phragmites control, maybe down in the southern portion of the county. She has some different grant opportunities out there, and I've asked her about bringing that to St. Clair County. And another would be maybe some shallow water areas for wildlife, if that type of property owner is interested in that. Of course, what we're pursuing right now and what we're here for to educate you on is we're trying to pursue this Farm Bill conservation technician position that would help utilize the new Farm Bill monies. And we're seeking some private funding from DTE. I'm working with the Nature Conservancy and the Department of Natural Resources and other sorts for some grant opportunities as well. And I guess the other, another thing we're pursuing, Sanilac County, we do have access to a forester. It's really through the Tuscola Conservation District, but we are getting far more requests down in St. Clair County versus Sanilac County, and I'm having them forward up to him so we can document the need. Because if a position become available through the Department of Agriculture to have a forester, we'd like to house them in that office there. So I guess the proposal that we're kind of throwing out there, and you guys have read it, we have a request into the NRCS for $175,000 grant proposal. It would be a 3-year position, and we're asking $130,000 of that to come from the NRCS, and the remaining $45,000 to come from local partners. So because it is a Macomb-St. Clair combined office for as far as serving USDA programs, we have asked Macomb County as well to contribute. We're asking, when we know where that lies, would like to ask the commissioners to contribute here, and as well as our St. Clair and our Sanilac, our partnership that we've had. We are confident enough with the reforestation sales and stuff to be able to contribute a third of that as well. So that's kind of where it stands tonight. I just wanted to kind of educate you. The booklet that we passed out is a little more in depth of the programs that we offer. And I guess I'd like the opportunity to come back to answer. I could answer questions tonight as well, but if you guys had a chance to actually look through the programs in a little more detail, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
I see some commissioners with questions. Commissioner Graytop?
I just have one quick question. What is seasonal high tunnels?
A seasonal high tunnel is a greenhouse type structure, but it is not cement, so it's allowing for extended growing seasons of vegetables. I mean, just utilizing the ground, okay?
All right, thank you.
There is a very increased demand for that with the whole local, buy local, fresh going on right now.
Okay. Commissioner Rushing, you had a question.
I have, I think, 5 questions. Joe Goober, who I know very well, gave me a call and gave me a heads up on this. And I also talked to Steve Smasko on this. And you gave the time frame, and you got the figures down there. You're saying $15,000 provided by St. Clair and Sanilac CD partnership. Are you asking anything from Sanilac County? That's on your letter.
What's that?
You said we break down $175,000 total grant package. $130,000 by the NRCS.
Yep.
$15,000 provided by St. Clair Sanilac CD partnership. Are you asking Sanilac for any?
Sanilac County, we have a technician in Sanilac County.
Right.
Yes, the commissioner, you're talking about the commissioner.
But no money coming from Sanilac County. This is a request from St. Clair and Macomb County to do your offset funding for the match.
Yes, well, the other is coming through Sanilac Conservation District.
Well, you're asking for $15,000. If I understood this right, it's a 3-year program, so you're asking for $5,000 from St. Clair County.
Per year.
Per year.
Oh, excuse, this technician would be just in this county, in Macomb County, okay?
But you have Sanilac, so I just thought I'd question why you have Sanilac.
The reason being, what it is there was a couple of programs to help offset, because, everybody knows.
I don't want to hold the meeting up.
Yeah,
The
okay.
short, there's no money coming from Sanilac County for this grant.
No.
Okay. So the $15,000, even though it's going to be a Sanilac CD partnership, the money's actually coming from St. Clair County.
Yeah, we're going to drive it through sales.
This board does consider the $15,000, $5,000 per year for the 3-year program. You go to Macomb County with the same request, and let's say they turn it down. Now you're going to be $15,000 short from either one. Do you have where that funding may come from in case? Because if we go forward and we want to support this, you may come back and say, well, Macomb County fell through, or vice versa.
Yeah.
And you might be potentially asking for $30,000 to $10,000 a year. Is that an option, or do you have any?
That would be an option. I would go back to the Conservation District boards and I would say, okay, well, maybe they could see that. You know, I've thought about maybe we should go look at townships. Maybe we should scale our grant back. I've
Just
thought of
consideration,
those, no,
because
I've thought of
go
those
forward.
scenarios. And the reason I wanted to come here tonight was I'm probably going to get asked, well, did you talk to St. Clair County? Because this is next Wednesday.
You'll get some more.
I thought, well, I better talk.
You'll get some more specific questions.
Yes.
I have another one. How could this potentially help the Bell River watershed, which is one of the ones?
How
that
can
we're
it
currently-
substantially help it?
How could it help it at all? This
The
position.
Bell
that you're
River,
asking
if it's in an agricultural area and it's farmers producing soil erosion, spray, nutrient management, a lot
for.
of that.
Familiar with the $250,000 grant from the state of Michigan for the Bell River watershed?
Mm-hmm.
Would this help any of the documentation that we have to provide to Lansing to go forward with our watershed?
For implementation?
Right.
Yes. Yes, I'm sure it would.
Just you have it in your
We can
program, so I thought I'd
utilize-
ask you about it.
Well, so we can utilize the Farm Bill monies to implement the buffer zones and what's needed, nutrient management to make a cleaner watershed.
Any other questions?
I just comment here quick, Howard.
Commissioner?
Probably the furthest thing from a farmer you're ever going to find. But I ask myself the questions from an economic development tool. We do encourage a lot of different activity throughout the county, and as you well know, and I'll refer to Farmer Steve down there, we've got a tremendous amount of agriculture in St. Clair County. And does this give us the opportunity to help better position, to help our agricultural industry that we have in here to be more successful and to thrive is really the question that I ask. And I look at I met one of the local guys, Douchey Farms, who's actually growing hops now for some of the local. They're actually doing the brew thing over here. He actually was never able to find employment. I knew him a little bit from previous Marysville family. Went to Arizona, had an opportunity to come back to get involved with a family farm. Now he is a hops grower, and he was a probation officer before. So are those if we can do those things to help with those opportunities, then it makes a lot of sense for me. That's just my little 2 cents.
There's no downside to this, Jeff. There's an economic benefit. There's also a technical benefit. It's a resource that people in agriculture can use to facilitate federal benefits and complying with various federal requirements and the environmental issues and so forth. So it's a good thing.
Just quick, one thing from the farmer's perspective, this would really help us because the government has decided, partially in the last Farm Bill and almost totally in this Farm Bill, that the only way that they're going to hand out money is through the NRCS program. And the NRCS, and not through the FSA, the Farm Service Agency. The NRCS has the money and the programs, but we need the technical assistance of the soil conservation to walk the farmers through it to actually get the grants written so that we can get the money, so that we can then build the structures, hire the excavation crew or the builders to build the fertilizer structures or the manure structures and that sort of thing. So it's a benefit to the farmer and to businesses in the community also.
Just one more thing. Macomb County did have a joint meeting with us, probably 4 or 5 years ago. They were talking about some type of funding. It was a joint position, and it never came to fruition at the time. So I think as far as, they were actually the ones that were driving it. And I don't want to speak for them, but I would not be surprised if they weren't all in on this thing, so.
All my communication with them has been actually very positive so far, but, as well, everybody knows budgets are tight, but they have sounded very positive and very receptive to what I'm proposing here. And I guess one thing I do want to leave on, maybe you commissioners don't understand this, but when NRCS is actually in the county and has an office in there, and one of the reasons we formed this partnership to open up the district again is NRCS requires a local conservation district to bring the resource concerns to them. Without that local contribution of bringing that to it, they actually can leave the county because they say there's no local support. That has not happened, to my knowledge, but it is within how they operate, their operational.
I'd like to make a motion to forward this to the full board.
Support. Any other discussion?
Just
Yes,
one, just for
Commissioner.
consideration for Kerry or potentially Bill Kaufman. Jeff brought up the potential that this is an economic development. Maybe if there's 5,000 available in an EDA, because we support them very strongly. If this is in addition to an EDA, possibly get the 5,000 annually from that, because we give them a ton of money. Just so, for an option where we can potentially get the money from.
Good point. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, any other updates from commissioners regarding environmental or public works matters? Seeing none, any conceptual initiatives from administration?
None.
Okay, no old business. We'll go to new business. The first thing is the landfill Canadian currency conversion, and Matt's here, I'm sure, to explain that.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we send this on to the full board.
Got a handout.
Support?
It's been moved and supported.
Good evening, Commissioners. There's a memo on your agenda that you should have had in your packets discussing Canadian currency conversion. In a nutshell, we've been, as you well know, I've been taking Canadian refuse now since, I believe, the month of March. And we have made the option available for our Canadian customers and to attract future Canadian customers for them to pay us in Canadian currency rather than requiring payment in U.S. funds. That relieves the burden on those companies to do the currency conversion with their bank, deal with the fees. We've said we'll take care of that on our end. So what we have done, and when I say we, I mean myself primarily, and the Assistant Treasurer, Molly Tierney, who couldn't be here this evening. But actually, Molly contacted all the banks that we do business with and other banks that we don't, to kind of canvass them on different scenarios given an assumed published Canadian to U.S. exchange rate, and talk about what fees are involved, what requirements they have to set up these transactions to get Canadian dollars converted to U.S. and then into our local account. And the results of those are shown on the second page, and yes, Commissioner Rushing at table. Using an assumed exchange rate, that was the exchange rate at the time that Ms. Tierney did the investigation, of 0.92 US dollars to Canadian dollars. You can see that Bank of America gave pretty significantly the best rate of return, if you will, on our payments. Since I wrote this memo, we did some additional investigation into using PayPal as the conduit for receiving payments. And the graph that I had handed out prior to me assuming the podium includes the PayPal line on that graph. And you can see that PayPal actually returns a slightly better return on smaller payments or smaller chunks of money, but when you get into the larger sums, Bank of America still outperforms PayPal as well, fairly significantly. The reason why I'm here is because we do not currently have, the county does not currently have any accounts with Bank of America. And I need the Board of Commissioners authorizations to set up those accounts and start conducting business with them. So that is my request this evening, that you would forward to the full board approval of my recommendation for Bank of America as our bank to do these currency conversions.
Commissioner Graytop.
If you have an exchange rate of 0.92 that you've used as a comparison for all of these branches, the difference in here then are what, the fees that they charge you for handling the money?
That's correct.
Okay, so you're saying Bank of America has lower fee for handling it than everybody else.
That's correct. And the primary reason for that is Bank of America does a huge sum of international currency conversion. So in the way they kind of look at it, the more the merrier, put it in the pot, so they can charge a lower fee to do those conversions because they're handling a huge volume of money.
Okay.
Question for you, though, on this now. We have a rate set in American dollars, whatever that number is with them. They pay us in Canadian currency. Are we taking the hit then on the, the difference?
For most of our customers, we actually have a rate set in Canadian
A
currency.
Canadian currency, okay.
We've told them this is how many Canadian we
You
would
broke
like.
it down, okay, very good.
Okay, do we have a motion? Yes. We have a motion?
Is it, I'd
And
support
support.
it.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Matt? Next item on the new business is the Day Treatment Night Watch Wetland Mitigation Project for final action. Do we have,
I can.
go ahead, Commissioner.
Sure. Several years ago, it was decided that we wanted to make some improvements to some property behind the existing Day Treatment Night Watch facility. They wanted to expand their facility, and the Sheriff's Department was looking at the construction of an impound lot in an evidence storage area. So the board agreed to pursue a wetlands permit to allow us to develop that site. We worked with Tetra Tech, we worked with ECT on those. Since then, we've had a lot of discussions with the EPA and the DNR or DEQ regarding that piece of property. The site that was identified to be used for mitigation is behind the landfill, a 40-acre parcel, 20 acres of which is wetlands. The board has since, along with their consultant, decided we really do not want to tie that 40-acre parcel up, and we should look at a second location, an alternative location for the mitigation of the property behind Day Treatment Night Watch. So the mitigation ratio is roughly 10 to 1. We're looking at mitigating 1.95 acres, or roughly 2 acres of land, so we need to identify 20 acres of wetland. We've been talking with the Drain Commissioner, who has acquired a piece of property up in Fort Gratiot that is fairly high quality wetlands. The DEQ has said in concept they agree with moving the mitigation site from the landfill out to the Fort Gratiot site. We will have to purchase the property from the Drain Commissioner to reimburse him what he paid for it. We don't know exactly how many acres we're going to have to acquire. That will be determined after the consultant goes out and does their delineation and finds out how many acres of total land it will take to acquire to meet the 10 to 1 required ratio. We estimate that our worst case scenario is that the purchase of land will cost approximately $96,000. In order to fund this project, we also need to extend our contract with ECT. That is estimated to cost, you'll see in the memo here, $45,000. So in total, we need approximately $141,000 additional dollars to keep this project moving forward. We do have just under $67,000 left in the original project that has been uncommitted that could be used for this project. We also have some funds left in the construction fund for Day Treatment Night Watch. When that building was constructed, there was about $80,000 left. The project came in under budget. Jenny Posey and Carrie Hefting have been talking about the use of those remaining funds that exist to help fund this project So we do have sufficient dollars to pick up this additional $141,000. We need authorization from the board to extend our contract with the ECT in the amount of $45,000. And we need authorization from the board to expend up to $96,000 to purchase whatever amount of property is necessary in Fort Gratiot to complete this transaction. We are asking for final action. The DEQ, as well as the EPA, has been hounding us relentlessly to get this resolved, get it in place, and until all the agreements are signed, we cannot begin construction of the impound facility that the sheriff would like to construct behind Day Treatment Night Watch. Our recommendation is the board approve the request.
Do we have a motion? Commissioner Bone.
We started this 6 years ago, this discussion with my predecessor, as far as when we built the day treatment, going through the process. There was that additional 5 acres that we bought. We felt that it made a lot of sense to, to mitigate this and get it so you have the opportunity to do some expansion there. And like I said, this thing's been in the works for quite some time, so.
I'd support the motion.
Okay. Moved by Commissioner Bone, supported by Commissioner Riley. Any other discussion? Commissioner?
Question for Bill. This ECT contract, was that competitively bid, Bill?
No, this is an extension of our existing contract with ECT. They've been doing all of the work, and yes, when that project was initiated, that service was competitively bid.
It seemed a couple items were stood out, the $14,000 7-year service, and then $19,000. There's a couple big items in there. I didn't know if that was standard, industry standard, or competitively bid, or how those numbers came up.
You will see the item for $19,500, regardless of what site we use. That was an expense we had to incur. So that was part of the original package with ECT. Now, if we the third or the last item you see there for $14,000, we may or may not have to expend any of those funds.
The contract says service is not to exceed without authorization. That tells me if I had that contract, I'd run it up to the $14,000, but
they would have to come back to the county to get our approval to do that work. And we would certainly check with the DEQ to ensure it's necessary.
The reason it wasn't RFP was it's an extension, and it doesn't make sense to go back and switch horses midstream.
Start all over.
That's part of the monitoring that the state requires you to monitor the sites after the fact.
I just want to make sure those couple of items were looked at, and that explains it.
Commissioner Tomlin, do you have a question?
I'm kind of late to this project, but what about the use, the sheriff, the impound lot?
Yes.
Will this delay that?
No, the sooner we can get this resolved with the DEQ and EPA, we'll be able to begin that project. We'd already funded in 2014 clearing of the space that would be necessary to construct the impound lot and some initial grading that would be done. The sheriff, as well as the prosecutor, has the funding available to put up the required fencing. So will this delay it? Certainly changing from one site to another will cause a delay. How long it will take to get all of this completed, I really couldn't tell you at this time. I do know the EPA and the DEQ are just waiting for us to say, okay, here is the site, ECT, here is the report. Will you approve it? Will you issue the permit?
It just seems like a lot of money to switch sites, and we have so much extra property at the landfill already. Are these other dollars you're talking about funding, are those single-purpose monies, or if we didn't expend those could be used potentially in the general fund?
Well, the $80,000 that's left over from the Day Treatment Night Watch project that would help fund this, those are in the Public Improvement Fund. So they would stay within the public improvement fund. They could be used on other public improvement projects, yes. Could they be transferred to the general fund? No.
Carl, you're thinking you'd rather see the landfill property used for mitigation than this purchase property?
I just don't know that it's worth all the cost to do all that. It's just,
To your point, though, the only reason that, let's face it, the lockout, you could probably go buy 2 acres somewhere else for less money, but it's the proverbial location. It's located right next to, the jail, obviously, and you can monitor it. You can walk out, get your car out of lockup, all that other stuff goes along with it. When we first looked at the landfill site, we were kind of going down that path, and to be quite frank, we didn't have our landfill consultants on with us a couple of years. Like I said, this is 6 years ago when we started this thing. And if you call Jim Logston today, who's our landfill consultant, he'll tell you, basically you're crazy to give any
Don't impede the landfill.
don't impede the landfill, yeah. So
and I guess my other concern, if I
Go ahead.
It's just that statement that it's going to fly really fast through the DEQ and EPA. I find that not to be consistent with my experience.
we've identified the project though before. I mean, we've been working on this for quite some time. And I think that piece of it, that the site, we've talked about the mitigation, now we're just going to mitigate.
My experience is whenever you change anything, it takes them forever to approve it.
Commissioner Rushing.
Well, I brought up a lot of concerns when you first sent the letter out to all commissioners, Bill. The 40 acres, I believe, are a much bigger asset to keep at the landfill for landfill purposes, so I think what we're moving forward to is a much better option. You're showing that a total cost of $141,000 potentially. That would be the absolute high end, I believe, for the mitigation cost. The land that we're going to potentially purchase will be from $72,000 to $96,000. My question on that, and we have a great relationship with the drain commissioner, would it even be an option? Would it be a consideration that benefited the county to have a 3-year payoff? So that's a 3 years, so it wouldn't cut into our budget with the drain commissioner. If that's an option to help out the county. So just have that for
Something I can
consideration.
bring up
I'm
with
sure
you.
Bob Wiley would consider that. The last one is the cost of who's going to build the impound lot? You said the prosecuting attorney and our sheriff would. Who's going to build the impound lot? Is that going to come out of general funds or the sheriff's and the prosecuting attorney?
Those are funds, there have been some funds placed in the public improvement fund already, and I believe the funds that the prosecutor and the sheriff were contributing were from your forfeiture program.
So there's going to be an additional cost above and beyond the 141 to build the impound lot. That's going to come out of our...
Correct.
Okay. You have an estimated cost?
Not out of
that?
the general fund. There's, I believe we have $155,000 that are dedicated in the public improvement fund for removal of trees in the initial.
We have an
grading.
estimated cost of the impound lot.
I'm not sure if the sheriff.
It's not important today, but just if you did.
Any other questions regarding this matter? Keep in mind, it's for final action.
One question for Bill, too. Just to make sure, it sounds like, the sheriff's department activities, a lot of the vehicles impounded are the result of the drug interdiction task force duties, and there'd be no millage funds. We had this issue with the library millage and some of these legal questions. The funding from the capital improvement would be strictly funds from those areas. It would not blend over or fall into the area where it might affect the millage fund.
Correct. None of those funds would come from the drug task force millage. They would come from fines and fees that are paid.
Or if it did, make sure it's allowable. That was the question with this other issue with the art band building. I want to make sure we didn't have any issues pop up with that. So.
Right. Yeah, at this point, there's no intent to use any of the millage funds to support it.
Thanks.
Okay, any other questions? Saying none, this is for final action, so could we take roll?
Commissioner Smasko?
Yes.
Commissioner Tamian?
Yes.
Commissioner Bohm?
Yes.
Commissioner Riley?
Yes.
Commissioner Rushing?
Yes.
Commissioner Greatop?
Yes.
Commissioner Heidemann?
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The Smith Creek Activities Report, could I have a motion to accept and file the Smith Creek Activities Report?
So moved. Support.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. At this time, we have other environmental and public works matter, and Commissioner Tomlin would like to do a little presentation on his work with Parks and Rec.
In front of your chairs this evening, there's a brief memo from me and an attachment that was presented to the Parks and Recreation Consultant Selection Committee. Basically, under the board's revised purchasing policies, if the Parks and Recreation Commission wants to designate consultants for architectural services, landscape architectural services, or civil engineering services, we need to go through a process, and that the board policy limits the selection of those consultants to a 3-year maximum period of time. In my memo, I outline who the members of the committee are. I'm the representative of the board, and Mark Brochu, our Director of Parks and Recreation, we've been working very closely with. What our committee did is we contacted the QPS Coalition in Michigan to get assistance on how to go about this process. That's what this big overview is, a PowerPoint presentation that's printed out and explains. And basically, it's a quality-based process instead of a low bid type of arrangement. And we have come up with a proposed timeline for this execution of this process, which is the 3rd page of my memo. We're giving you an update today. By September 10th, we're planning to send out an RFQ and post it on the MITN, Michigan Intergovernmental Trade Network, and also make a direct mailing to some of the known regional firms that are engaged in these types of parks and recreation services. This evening, we want to make the Board of Commission aware of this, because if there are certain firms that you would like to see that wouldn't be responding to either the MITN posting, that, please let us know, and we will make sure that they get a separate mailing. Then we're going to move through a process where we basically request these firms to submit their qualifications and experience in the 3 different disciplines, and then the committee will undertake interviews of these firms, and our goal is to come up with 3 firms in each discipline, so that when a project comes along, that we can talk with 3 different firms that are pre-qualified and get their proposals, both in terms of the plan that they would execute as well as their cost. And this process will involve an actual interview of those firms, and then we would plan to make a recommendation to the Parks and Recreation Commission on or about November 12th. That's a brief summary of all those pages, but either I or Mark Brochu would be happy to answer any questions you might have about it.
Are there any questions for Commissioner Tomlin? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
It's one of those extra jobs you get as a commissioner.
Yes, well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank
You're
you
welcome.
again.
Okay, moving on, information only, the Park and Rec financial documents. I'd entertain a motion that they be received and filed.
So move.
Support.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Motion to
This
receive
ti-
and file packets from the Environmental Public Works Committee meeting.
Support.
Moved and supported. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
This time, I'd like to call the Ways and Means Committee to order. Could I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Samasco?
Here.
Commissioner Tamian?
Here.
Commissioner Heidemann?
Here.
Commissioner Bohm?
Here.
Commissioner Riley?
Here.
Commissioner Greatop?
Here.
Commissioner Rushing?
Here. Okay, on item 2, we have an addition, deletion, or change to the agenda. I see item A, equalization request for Manning table change.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we amend the agenda to include the equalization request for Manning table change. I'm assuming item 7F for new business.
Support. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Can I have a motion to accept the agenda as now presented?
I would so move.
Support. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. Do we have any citizens wishing to be heard in the Ways and Means Committee? Seeing none, we'll move up to updates. Do we have any updates? Seeing none, we'll move up to item number 5, conceptual initiatives. Do we have any tonight? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to old business. We have no old business. We'll move to 7, new business. A, first one, Resolution 1437, approving the Corps' agreement with MDOT.
Make a motion, we send it on to the full board.
Have a second?
Support.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. 7B, renewal of agreement with Strategic Communication Solution, SFA, for lobbying and grant writing services.
I move that the agreement with SFA be forwarded to the full board.
Support.
Any discussion?
Just-
All in favor?
I was just going to give a quick plug here. I use them on a fairly regular basis when we're doing a lot of these different meetings, where we bring in a lot of different people, and they've been great to work with. And as I've said in the past, we've used other consultants and some others, and some haven't worked out so well for us, but I would like to see this continue, and hence we're going to continue with it. So thank you.
Just so commissioners know, members of the Strategic Affairs are with us tonight. If you have any questions, I'm sure they would. I think we've been working with them for a few years. Very familiar with the services they provide. So, thank you.
All right then, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. Move on to 7C, Medicare Advantage renewal, and this is for final action.
I'll move that the Medicare Advantage renewal be given final approval.
Have a second?
Support.
Any discussion? I have a roll call, please. Is that required?
If I could share just a little bit of information, just to emphasize what a good move this was on the part of the board. If you remember last year when our actuaries were here in Nyhart, and they looked once again at where our retirement healthcare system stood, and we doubled the expected lifespan of the healthcare system. One of the biggest reasons was because of this Medicare Advantage program, and they noted that in their report. I checked today before our meeting to look at what we would be paying if we eliminated the Medicare Advantage program and moved all of those post-65 retirees back into our self-insured program. And we do have rates for 2014 for our self-insured program as well as for the Medicare Advantage program. And our costs are roughly half of what they would be as long as we keep them in the Medicare Advantage program, in spite of the increase that has been reported in the memo here. So it still remains the best route for us to take to continue providing quality health care to the post-65 retirees, but do so at a very reduced cost.
All right, any other discussion? We need a roll call for this.
Commissioner Tamian?
Yes.
Commissioner Heidemann?
Yes.
Commissioner Bohm?
Yes.
Commissioner Riley?
Yes.
Commissioner Greatop?
Yes.
Commissioner Samasco?
Yes.
Commissioner Rushing?
Yes. All right, we'll move on to D, contract for AT&T Internet service.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the contract for AT&T Internet Service be forwarded to the full board.
Support.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. Moving on to 7E, the Sheriff's Department manning table change.
Mr.
Do I
Chairman,
have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll move that the Sheriff's Department manning table change be forwarded to the full board for action.
Support.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. Moving on to 7F, equalization request for the manning table change.
That's just made it tonight.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move to have the equalization request for manning table change placed on the full board agenda for approval.
Have support?
I'll support that.
Any discussion? We've got Mr. Hill here tonight. Anybody has any questions? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. All right. If I can fit this in here now, we have other ways and means matters. I'd like to read this special tribute. I'd like to put it in here. And it's a special tribute issued by the state of Michigan, and it's to Staff Sergeant Richard C. Wall, who happens to be my father-in-law. This was done with the efforts of my brother-in-law and also our state senator, and I'd like to read through it. Let it be known, it is a great pleasure that we gather with family and friends to recognize Staff Sergeant Richard C. Wall Sr. for his outstanding service to both the United States and France during World War II. In May of 1940, Germany launched an offensive against France. German forces circumvented the Maginot Line through the Ardennes forest. Within 6 weeks, German troops had defeated the French army and captured France. Germany and the German sympathizing French government, known as Vichy France, occupied France until shortly after victory in Europe in 1945. Richard Wall and those like him helped to bring about that victory. He served as staff sergeant with the 86th Chemical Company Sea Mortar Battalion in World War II. He fought in a number of places in France and Europe, including Normandy, northern France, the Ardennes, the Rhineland, and Central Europe. For his sense of duty and courage, Sergeant Wall was decorated with the Good Conduct Medal, Bronze Star Medal, American Defense Service Ribbon, European, African, Middle Eastern Theater Ribbon with 1 silver battle star, 3 overseas service bars, and 1 service stripe. It is very clear that Sergeant Wall served the United States well and with distinction. On July 2nd, 2014, however, France also recognized Sergeant Wall for his services rendered to the nation and the people of France. His appointment was the rank of Knight of Legion of Honor. This is France's highest distinction that they give anyone. In a very difficult time for France, many soldiers risked their lives on French soil to beat back Nazi Germany. Sergeant Wall was one of them. In special tribute, therefore, this document is dedicated to honor Staff Sergeant Richard C. Wall Sr. for his courage and service to the United States and France during the Second World War. Without the efforts of Sergeant Wall and others like him, our nation and the nation of France would not be the strong and free nations they are today. It is signed by our State Senator Phil Pavloff and also Rick Snyder, the Governor of the State of Michigan, 97th Legislature at Lansing, and that was signed on August 7, 2014. I learned some during this with the efforts of my brother-in-law, some things about my father-in-law I never knew, and I've been married to my wife now 40 years, so it was pretty special.
That's very cool. Very good, dude.
Okay, moving on. Is there any other ways and means matters? Okay, information only. Can I have a motion to file the information only?
Support.
All right.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. Can I have a motion to receive and file packets in regards to Ways and Means Committee?
So moved.
Support.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. At this time, I'd like to have a motion to go to executive session and also to include adjournment after executive session.
So moved.
Support. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed.
We hope you enjoyed this week's St. Clair County Board of Commissioners meeting. Your St. Clair County Commissioners broadcast these meetings on Comcast Local Access Channel 12 every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. If you have any questions on any part of this program, please feel free to contact your St. Clair County Board of Commissioners or staff. You can find their contact information, the meeting agenda, and videos of the meetings at www.stclaircounty.org.